Studio microphone asterisk asterisk. This millionaire said, "No one on earth can fix this engine." Mechanics failed. Experts gave up. Then, a single mom stepped out of the crowd, and in just minutes, she left everyone speechless. Face screaming in fear wrench before diving into the story. Comment where you're watching from, and don't forget to subscribe so you won't miss the latest stories. The engine coughed, then died. Again, steam hissed angrily from beneath the hood of a luxury sports car that looked like it had no business sitting on a dusty, pothole-filled country road. The polished black paint shimmered under the sun, but the $250,000 machine was now nothing more than an expensive lawn ornament. Next to it stood a man in a sharp, tailored suit that was now damp with sweat. His shirt clung to his back, and his perfectly styled hair had begun to wilt in the heat. He removed his sunglasses, squinting toward the horizon like he expected help to magically appear. Meet Victor Langston, millionaire tech investor, serial entrepreneur, and a man who lived life on fast forward. He was used to five-star hotels, first-class flights, private jets, and personal assistants. A problem like this, in his world, this sort of thing didn't happen. Yet here he was, completely and utterly stuck. Victor muttered under his breath and popped the hood again, already knowing it was pointless. He didn't really know what he was looking for, but he couldn't just stand there doing nothing. Steam hissed up in his face as he lifted the hood, the heat immediately clouding his vision. "Come on," he grumbled, waving away the steam. He had already tried the obvious. He'd toggled every switch, turned the ignition more times than he could count, unplugged the car battery, and even Googled solutions, though his phone barely had a signal and the videos kept buffering. None of it worked. There were no repair shops in sight, and it had been over an hour since another car passed. Victor kicked the tire in frustration. Nobody can fix this. Not without a tow truck and a miracle. He leaned back against the side of the car, wiping his forehead with a silk pocket square now soaked through. Every passing minute made him more uncomfortable and more furious. This car was brand new, top of the line, the best of the best, built by German engineers and paid for in full with a swipe of his platinum card. Why was it sitting here like a broken toaster? He pulled out his phone again, hoping, praying, that a signal might have magically returned. Nothing. Just a spinning loading icon and 0 bars. His phone battery was at 9%. Great. He looked around. Endless rows of trees flanked the road there, shadows long under the summer sun. Birds chirped. A soft breeze rustled the leaves. It would have been peaceful if he wasn't slowly baking in an expensive cage of frustration. Then, just when he was about to give up and start walking toward the distant town he vaguely remembered passing 20 minutes earlier, he heard something. Rumbling engine. From behind, he turned out a beat-up blue minivan with peeling paint, and a rattling bumper slowly rolled to a stop a few feet behind him. The contrast between the two vehicles couldn't have been more extreme. His sleek machine looked like it had come straight from a car show, while the minivan looked like it had seen one too many school runs, grocery trips, and cross-country vacations. The driver's side door opened, and out stepped a woman in her mid-30s. She wore jeans, a faded t-shirt, and her hair was tied up in a messy ponytail. Sweat glistened on her brow, and one of her shoes squeaked as she walked. Victor barely glanced at her, already assuming she'd just ask if he needed help and then drive off when she realized she couldn't offer any. "You all right there?" she asked, squinting toward the hissing hood. Victor forced a tired smile. "Not unless you're secretly a mechanic." She gave a small smile back. "Actually, I kinda am." He raised an eyebrow. "Really?" She nodded, brushing her hands off on her jeans as if she was ready to get to work. "Name's Lena. I'm not certified or anything fancy, but I've fixed my fair share of stubborn engines. My van's older than my kids combined, and it's still running." Victor didn't say anything at first. He looked her over, unsure. If she was serious, she didn't look like the type who could handle a car like his. She looked like, well, a mom. The kind who probably had crayons in her purse and peanut butter crackers under the seat. But at this point, what did he have to lose? He crossed his arms. "Be my guest." Lena walked up, peered under the hood, and immediately began moving with a kind of quiet confidence. Her eyes scanned the parts, her hands brushed wires, and within moments, she seemed to know more about what was wrong than he did after an hour of frustration. Victor watched in silence. unsure whether to feel impressed or embarrassed somewhere. Behind her, one of her kids stuck their head out of the van window, sipping from a juice box and watching curiously. And in that moment, standing in the middle of nowhere, next to a stranger who had just pulled over, Victor Langston, millionaire tech genius, realized something humbling. Help doesn't always come from where you expect it. And sometimes, the person who fixes your biggest problem doesn't wear a suit. They drive a squeaky old minivan and wear sneakers from Walmart. The low rumble of the old minivan faded as it rolled to a stop behind the broken-down luxury sports car. The dust settled slowly in the golden afternoon light. Victor turned and watched, eyebrows narrowing as the driver's door creaked open. Out stepped a woman in her mid-30s, dressed in worn-out jeans, a faded t-shirt, and well-used sneakers. Her hair was tied back in a simple ponytail, strands sticking to her forehead from the heat. Her face was calm, focused, completely unbothered by the scene in front of her. There was something solid in the way she carried herself, like she didn't rattle easily. Behind her, a little head popped up in the back seat window. A child, maybe 5 or 6, holding a juice box and staring wide-eyed at the shiny sports car and the frustrated man beside it. The woman stepped forward, eyeing the steaming hood. "You all right there?" she asked in a tone that was more practical than concerned. Victor gave a tired, dismissive chuckle. "Not unless you're secretly an engineer." He said it more out of sarcasm than hope. He didn't mean to be rude. He was just drained, and the idea that this casually dressed woman could do anything he hadn't already tried seemed unlikely. She didn't take offense. Instead, she smiled and extended a hand. "Name's Lena Carter. And funny enough, yeah, I am an engineer. Or used to be." Victor gave her a puzzled look. She nodded toward her minivan. "Was driving back from the store when I saw you stuck here. Figured I'd stop. My kids and I have broken down enough times to know how frustrating it can be." He hesitated, glancing back at the engine. "This isn't exactly your average family sedan." "I noticed," she replied, walking slowly toward the car and peering under the hood. "Beautiful machine, but even the best can act up. Usually it's something small that people overlook." Victor frowned, a little defensive. "I've tried everything. Battery's fine, fuel's full, and the ignition's not responding." Lena crouched down beside the front bumper, inspecting from a lower angle. "Sounds like a sensor issue, maybe something triggering a false engine lock. Modern cars have so many automatic shutoffs. One glitch can stop the whole thing." He watched her closely, still skeptical. "So what's your story?" he asked. "You said you used to be an engineer?" She nodded, brushing her hands off on her jeans. "Yeah, mechanical and systems design. Worked at an aerospace firm for 8 years. Victor's expression shifted slightly. She continued, "But after my husband passed, I stepped away. 2 kids under 5, no family nearby. It was too much to juggle. So I started freelancing part-time, working on small engines and household repairs while raising them." She glanced back at the minivan, where her older child was now drawing on the fogged window with a finger. "I still keep my tools handy," she added. Victor looked from Lena to the van, then back at her again. She didn't look like someone who could fix a high-end engine, but something about her, maybe her calm confidence, maybe the way she didn't try to impress him, made him pause. "You really think you can fix a car like this?" he asked, folding his arms. "I've fixed worse," she replied simply. There was no bravado, no boasting, just certainty. Victor stared for a second, then stepped aside with a sigh. "All right, knock yourself out." She grinned and walked up to the engine like it was an old friend. Her movements were smooth, efficient, not rushed. She popped a small latch inside the engine compartment and traced a cable with her fingers, then leaned in to listen. "I'll need a wrench," she said, turning toward her van. From the back of her vehicle, she pulled out a faded red toolbox, one of those big metal ones with stickers peeling off. Clearly used. Well used. She opened it with a clack, grabbed a wrench, and returned to the car like she'd done this 1,000 times. Victor stood beside her, arms still crossed, but now watching her hands with interest. "You're not just a mom," he said quietly. Lena laughed. "No such thing as just a mom. We're a lot of things, depending on the day. Today I'm a mechanic. Yesterday I was a plumber. Tomorrow I'm probably going to be an electrician." He let out a small laugh, genuinely amused. For the first time in hours, he didn't feel annoyed. She poked around the engine with purpose, tightening, adjusting, and inspecting wires, Victor realized something strange was happening. He was hopeful, not because she had fancy tools or wore a uniform, but because she looked like she actually knew what she was doing. And suddenly, despite the absurdity of it all, he thought to himself, maybe, just maybe, she's the one who's going to fix this. With the hood propped open and steam hissing out like a tired dragon, Lena Carter stepped forward and waved the hot air aside like it was nothing new. Her eyes scanned the engine bay, not with curiosity, but with familiarity, like someone who had seen chaos before and knew exactly where to start taming it. Victor Langston stood beside her, arms folded, skepticism written all over his face. He had tried everything he knew, and everything YouTube could teach him with one bar of signal. But none of it had worked. Now this woman, who looked more like she was on her way to a school pickup than an engine repair job, was poking around his $250,000 car like it was a lawnmower that needed a tune-up. "You always carry tools with you?" Victor asked, more out of disbelief than genuine curiosity. Lena chuckled as she reached into the red toolbox she had pulled from her minivan. "When you drive a 15-year-old van with over 200,000 miles and 2 kids in the back seat. Yeah, you learn fast." She selected a wrench with a flick of her fingers, like a chef choosing the right knife, and leaned over the engine again. Her movements were deliberate, careful, controlled. Within seconds, her brow furrowed slightly, and she murmured to herself, "There you are." Victor leaned in closer. "What? What did you find?" She pointed with the wrench. "This battery terminal is barely hanging on. Vibration probably loosened it over time. Combine that with the fact your engine's computers are overly sensitive. And voila, false misfire readings and shutdown sequence." Victor blinked. "I didn't even notice that." "Most people wouldn't," she replied, tightening the connection. "This car is too smart for its own good. One tiny disruption in power, and the system panics." With the terminal secure, Lena pulled a small device from her toolbox, plugged it into the car's OBD port under the dash, and ran a quick diagnostic. "Now, the engine's computer needs a reset. I'm going to clear the fault codes and let it cycle back through its startup sequence." Victor watched as she navigated the scanner like someone who had done this 100 times. It beeped twice, then showed a green light. She unplugged it, shut the car door gently, and wiped her hands on a rag that had clearly seen better days. "All right," she said, turning toward Victor. "Give it a try." Victor stared at her, then at the car, and then back at her. "Wait. That's it." She nodded, wiping sweat from her brow. "That's it." He opened the door and slid into the leather driver's seat, still half expecting the engine to sputter and die like before. He tapped the ignition button. The dashboard lit up. The engine purred to life. Not just any sound. That sound. The smooth, deep, confident hum that had made him fall in love with the car the day he bought it. His jaw dropped. "You've got to be kidding me." "Nope," Lena said with a grin. 5-minute fix." He stepped out of the car like a man waking from a dream. "You just did that. In 5 minutes. No tow truck. No dealership. No fancy equipment." Lena shrugged, putting her tools away. "Sometimes, it's just a loose connection. Doesn't matter how expensive the car is. If the basics aren't solid, it won't go anywhere." Victor looked down at the engine, then back at Lena. He had paid top dollar for that car. It had the latest everything: software, diagnostics, real-time monitoring. But not one of those features could do what she just did with a wrench and some know-how. That he ran a hand through his hair, still stunned. "You've got some serious skills. Most people would have told me to get it towed and charge me a fortune." "I'm not most people," Lena said simply. "No, you're not," he admitted. "You just save me hours. Maybe days." Lena shrugged again, like it was no big deal. "Honestly, it's just experience. When you don't have the luxury of calling roadside assistance every time something breaks, you learn to figure things out on your own. Especially when 2 little ones are depending on you." Victor glanced back at her van, where one of her kids was now munching on crackers, legs swinging from the car seat. "You did all that," he said, pointing to the car, "while keeping 2 kids alive, fed, and entertained?" Lena laughed. "That's the real miracle." Victor shook his head, still smiling in disbelief. "I spent all morning thinking this car was toast. I was ready to call a flatbed and pay $5,000 just to get it to the dealership. Then you show up out of nowhere and fix it like it was nothing." "It's not about the car," she said gently. It's about understanding how things work and having the confidence to get your hands dirty. Victor nodded slowly, humbled. He thought about all the people he'd hired over the years, degrees, fancy resumes, endless jargon. Yet none of them had ever impressed him as much as Lena had in these 5 minutes. For a long, awkward second, Victor Langston, millionaire entrepreneur and tech mogul, stood there speechless that he stared at the engine, purring like new, and then at the woman who had made it happen. She wasn't wearing a branded jumpsuit. She didn't arrive in a service truck. She didn't carry diagnostic equipment worth thousands of dollars. She had a wrench, a basic scanner, and a quiet confidence that somehow made everything look easy. Victor's mind raced. He had wasted nearly 2 hours under the burning sun, swearing at the car, watching YouTube tutorials, trying to troubleshoot an issue he hadn't even understood. His multi-million-dollar investments couldn't help him. His expensive car was useless. His cell phone had no signal. And yet, here was Lena Carter, a single mom in an old blue minivan, with 2 kids in the back and groceries melting in the trunk, who pulled over, rolled up her sleeves, and solved his problem in 5 minutes. Victor finally broke the silence. "You're not just an engineer, are you?" he asked, still looking at her with wide-eyed amazement. Lena wiped her hands on a rag and smirked. "Nope," she said. "I'm also a mom, a hustler, a fixer, a lunch maker, homework helper, and part-time mechanic. I may not wear a suit, but I know my way around machines." Victor laughed, not the polite kind, but a real, genuine laugh he hadn't had in weeks. She was sharp, humble, and completely unfazed by who he was. That impressed him more than anything. "Do you know how many engineers I've interviewed who couldn't figure out something this simple?" he said, shaking his head. Lena shrugged. "Well, I've learned that. Most things aren't complicated. People just like to make them seem that way, especially when there's money involved." That hit Victor hard. He built his business empire around solving problems, with tech, with systems, with innovation. But sometimes, he realized, those solutions created new problems. Complexity for the sake of looking smart. Layers on top of layers, when the answer was really just a loose terminal. He pulled out a sleek silver business card from his wallet and handed it to her. "Listen," he said, his tone serious now. "You ever think about getting back into the field? I run a venture firm that backs problem solvers. Engineers, inventors, practical thinkers. People who actually get things done. And you, Lena, are exactly that." She looked at the card for a second, then smiled softly. "I appreciate that. Really, I do," she said, sliding the card into her pocket. "But right now, my kids need me more than any company does." Victor followed her gaze to the minivan. Her younger child had now fallen asleep, juice box tipped sideways. The older one waved from the back window, still munching on crackers. Lena continued, "I left the corporate world for a reason. Deadlines, late nights, missed birthdays. I've been there. It took losing my husband to realize that no paycheck is worth missing your child's first day of school." Victor was quiet. She wasn't just saying words. She was living them. And they hit deeper than he expected. "But," she added with a playful smile, "maybe one day, when things are more stable, I'll take you up on it. I miss the work. Just, not the chaos that came with it." Victor nodded, understanding in a way he hadn't before. "That makes sense. Balance is the one thing money can't buy." There was a pause as he looked at her minivan again. Scratched paint. One of the door handles was taped. The back tire looked worn. "Can I at least pay you for the fix?" he offered. "Name your price." She shook her head immediately. "You already said thank you. That's enough." He blinked. "Really?" "Yeah," Lena said. "You look like you needed a hand. So I offered one. That's how it should be." Victor felt something shift inside him. A sense of humility he hadn't felt in a long time. He'd built companies, raised millions, advised governments. But in this moment, he realized how much he'd overlooked the quiet heroes. The people who did without asking, who helped without boasting, who fixed things not for money or fame, but because it was the right thing to do. He took a deep breath, smiled, and for the first time in years, said something he hadn't had the need or courage to say in a very long time. "Thank you." Lena nodded. "You're welcome." With that, she walked back to her van, helped her youngest buckle in properly, and climbed into the driver's seat. The engine coughed to life, a stark contrast to the luxury purr of Victor's car, But in that moment, it sounded just as powerful as the minivan pulled away down the dusty road. Victor watched it go with a strange mix of gratitude and awe. And, deep down, he knew this wasn't just a car repair. It was a wake-up call. As Victor Langston drove away from that dusty country road, his sports car humming flawlessly beneath him, he realized he was carrying more than just a repaired engine. He was carrying a lesson he hadn't known he needed. For years, Victor had believed that success wore tailored suits, sat in high-rise offices, and graduated from Ivy League schools. That real solutions came from consultants, not convenience stores. That brilliance came with a title, not a wrench, but all it had taken was 5 minutes, and one single mom, to shatter that belief. Lena Carter had changed something in him. Not with a lecture, not with a sales pitch, but with quiet confidence, skill, and zero interest in impressing him. She didn't ask for money. She didn't hand him a resume. She just helped. And as he drove back into the city, Victor couldn't stop thinking about her. Her focus, her ease, the way she'd calmly solved a problem that had stumped him, and likely would have stumped half the engineers he employed. Word of the story didn't stay quiet for long. Unbeknownst to Victor or Lena, a driver in another car had witnessed the final moments of the roadside repair. They had filmed the interaction from a distance, capturing Victor's stunned face, Lena wiping her hands, and the moment the luxury car roared back to life. They posted the video on social media with the caption, "Millionaire says nobody can fix this until a single mom fixes it in 5 minutes." It spread like wildfire. 12 million views, hundreds of thousands of shares, thousands of comments praising Lena's calm, no-nonsense genius. People around the world were inspired by her. They called her a real-life MacGyver. Some dubbed her the minivan mechanic. Others simply called her the mom we all wish we had. Journalists reached out. Podcasts sent invites. Tech companies came knocking, offering everything from freelance contracts to full-time engineering jobs. One Foundation even offered college scholarships for her kids, citing her as a role model for women in STEM. But Lena, she stayed grounded. She politely declined most offers, explaining she didn't want to disrupt her kids' routine or uproot their lives. She still worked from her home garage, fixing engines, teaching her children how to change oil, jumpstart a battery, and, most importantly, believe in their ability to solve problems. She told one reporter, "I didn't do anything amazing. I just used what I knew and helped someone who needed it. That's what we're supposed to do." That humility, more than her skill, made people love her even more. And Victor? Well, he didn't forget. He couldn't. Back at his company headquarters, he stood before his board and made a speech that shocked everyone in the room. "I met a better engineer on the side of the road last week than I've met in half our interviews," he said. She didn't have a resume on her, but she had results. "And it made me realize we've been hiring the wrong way." He launched a new initiative the very next month. It was designed to support, train, and hire single parents with a background or even an interest in mechanical work, tech, or engineering. The program offered online classes, flexible internships, and mentorship for moms and dads juggling family life while chasing big dreams. He called it the Lena Initiative. It was his way of honoring the woman who had reminded him that genius doesn't always wear a suit. Sometimes it drives a scratched-up van and keeps snacks in the glove box. The Lena Initiative became a hit. It gained national attention. Other companies followed suit. It sparked a broader conversation in the tech world about untapped talent, invisible workers, and the silent geniuses who live in the margins of everyday life. Victor stayed in touch with Lena. Occasionally, he'd send her a check. She never cashed it. Sometimes, he sent her books for her kids, STEM kits, or just thank you cards signed by people who had been helped through the initiative. Each time, she smiled and said the same thing, "I'm just doing what I know." Months passed. Then a year. Victor didn't forget that day, not because his car got fixed, but because he got fixed. His perspective, his ego, his assumptions. And Lena? She never tried to be famous. She just kept being herself. She taught her kids how engines work. She taught them how life works, too. That being smart isn't about looking smart. That kindness can be powerful. And that sometimes the world underestimates the quiet ones. What's the takeaway? Real power doesn't always roar. Genius doesn't always shout. And heroes? They don't always wear capes. Sometimes they were ponytails. And fix things in 5 minutes flat. Never underestimate someone based on how they look. Lena didn't just fix an engine. She rewired a millionaire's mindset. In just 5 minutes, she taught the world that real heroes come in all forms. Sometimes they're not wearing capes. They're wearing grocery store t-shirts and have toddlers in the back seat. Wrench Red Heart. If this story inspired you, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Yellow Heart. Sometimes the greatest heroes are the ones we least expect. The quiet fixers, the everyday warriors, the single moms in minivans. Drop a comment below. What's one time someone underestimated you and you proved them wrong? Backhand index pointing down. We'd love to hear your story. And remember, on this channel, we bring you real stories with real heart. Because sometimes the smallest moments leave the biggest impact. Until next time, stay inspired, stay kind, and keep believing in the power of everyday people. Flex biceps sparkles.